So, this video is going to be contrary to my past three, more so a explanation towards fellow Catholics that have the question of, well, if God's all loving and He's all good, why is it why is He making it so hard for me right now? Why is my life so hard right now? Why is all this evil happening if He's so good? So it's not exactly going to be a refutation of the atheist viewpoint of this, and this video will more so function as an answer to a question for the Christians, or more so Catholics, simply because I'll be citing St. Thomas Aquinas for most of it, and um, yeah. So, why do bad things happen if God is all good? And how to respond when it happens, by yours truly.
Dance through the highways and on
Okay, so the main three parts of, or the main three reasons on why I see this question being asked is evil from will, or free will, for example, murder, evil from natural causes like cancer or like natural disasters, and then evil from accidental causes, which would be car crashes. So car crashes necessarily aren't like natural, because they're not like a nature thing, but they're also not like you're not willing your car to crash. It was an accident. So, the two parts of this video will cover why evil exists, so the cause, quote unquote, of evil, and what to do when bad things happen. And that'll primarily focus on the book of Job. Okay, so before we go into the theological standpoint of the quote cause of evil, we need to discuss something extremely important, which is supernatural good versus a natural good. So a supernatural good would be outcomes driven by divine grace. So that would be like going to church or like anything having to do with the supernatural. A natural good would be something that you receive simply for being. So this would be, your free will and reason. Because God is being in itself, God is also good. Therefore, everything that has being is naturally good, but not everything that is naturally good is supernaturally good, as that comes from the God given gift of grace. Part one, the cause, quote, of evil. Evil has a quote unquote cause, but not in the way that you think. For example, we'll read in the first part of Summa Theologica by St. Thomas, but evil has no formal cause, rather is a privation of form. Likewise, neither has it a final cause, but rather is it a privation of order to the proper end. It says not only the end has the nature of good, but also the useful, which is ordered to the end. Evil, however, has a cause by way of an agent, not directly, but accidentally. So St. Thomas uses like some of the most confusing dialect, and in my opinion, compared to all of the saints and church fathers in his descriptions of things. So we're gonna have a breakdown of this. So, meaning God is the material quote cause of evil, meaning evil could only exist in something, or sorry, good is the material cause of evil. God is not. That's a terrible misspeak, but evil can only exist in something that is good. For example, a broken arm is evil, however, the arm is good. The damage, quote, evil of the arm is simply a lacking of being healthy. For example, like during this lacking of light, it's not its own thing. It's like scientifically would be a lack of photons, right? So it's not its like own thing. Um, no formal cause. A formal cause is the design of something. Since evil is a lacking of design, it has no formal cause. No final cause. Evil does not have a set purpose. It's simply when something fails at its set purpose. For example, a kitchen knife is meant to, cut food, prepare food, but it can be used to kill people. That's not what it's designed for, but it can be deviated in a way that's what it's used for. But that's not what it's designed for. Um, Evil can only have an accidental agent cause. So good things or people don't intend evil, but evil can happen as an accidental side effect. For example, So a person driving to like a Christmas fair or like a Christmas mass, right? But he drives over a patch of ice and crashes. The crash was not the intention. It came as an accident of the initial intended action. Next, cause of evil, continued. Um, so evil from defection. So Summa says evil is caused by reason of the defect of some principle of action, meaning, say a kid trips because his legs are like weak. He has some sort of bone defect like osteoporosis. The weakness causes the evil, quote, for example, the fall. Um, but the action itself isn't evil. The defect or the person or tool causes that evil. Um, evil from side effect. Summa. It is caused by reason of the power or perfection of the agent when there necessarily follows on the form intended by the agent the privation of another form. So similar to the accidental agent, an example would this be, fire is good in the way that like it provides light and heat, warmth. We can cook on it. However, but when fire heats something, it naturally destroys, oxygen, the water, and the air. Obviously, it doesn't intend to do this as an evil, like as a like malice. Um, but that's just in its nature to do. Um, Destruction happens as a cause of its nature. Evil comes from natural good. Summa. A good will does not produce a morally bad act, since it is from the good will itself that a moral act is judged to be good. Nevertheless, the movement itself of an evil is caused by a rational creature, which is good, and thus good is the cause of evil. In other words, a good will can't produce a morally bad action. However, when someone chooses evil, that choice still comes from a being who is good by nature. So when evil actions happen, they ultimately come from something that started out naturally good. God does not cause evil against itself. So, Suba. God does not cause that evil which is contrary to itself, but some other evil. So this would be a drawback to the accidental evil against the water and the air caused by the fire. Um, this would be the same thing as, accidental evil. So evil only happens if something is already defective. For example, the Summa states, hence evil never follows in the effect, unless some of other evil pre-exists in the agent or in the matter, as was said above. But in voluntary things, the defect of the action comes from the will actually deficient, inasmuch as it does not actually subject itself to its proper rule. This defect, however, is not a fault, but a fault falls upon it from the fact that the will acts with this defect. So, what does this mean? So, in nature, evil only happens if something is, already, messed up. For example, with humans, evil happens when the will does not follow reason. For example, a student knows they should study for a test, and their mind is telling them, you should study for this test or else you're going to fail. However, they don't. Now, the student's will is supposed to follow reason, but the will is defective. Our will is not, we're not robots walking around. We have a free will, and in that way, it is defective to a certain extent of the fact that we can choose evil. So in this way, this will is defective. It doesn't listen to the reason. Because of that defect, the student performs the bad action of not studying. Does God create or cause evil? So this is the main big question within Christianity, in that, like, oh God, why did you do this to me, or even why did you let this happen to me? So Thomas will answer this question this following section. So Thomas first replies to statements made on Isaiah chapter 45 verse 7, which is a common use against the statement I just made. He states, I am the Lord, or sorry, Isaiah 45:7 states, I am the Lord, and there is no other God, forming the light and creating darkness, making peace and creating evil. And he also cite Amos chapter 3 verse 6, when it says, when a trumpet sounds in a city, do not the people tremble? When disaster comes to a city, has not the Lord caused it? So Aquinas replies simply, these passages refer to the evil of penalty and not the evil of fault, meaning God will permit human free will to generate moral evil, right? But he will only order or allow the resulting misfortune as a righteous response or consequence to that evil caused by the free will. Is God the indirect cause of evil? So the objection to God not being the indirect cause of evil would be good things can cause accidental evils. Because God creates those good things, he causes the evil. So because evil is not a thing with being, rather is it a defect or rather lacking of a good thing, therefore the evil arises from the good thing, not God. It's not connected in any way. For example, the leg's power to move is good. The defection causing the immobility is the evil. God caused the leg to have a natural good in its being, but it did not cause the defection. Or he did not cause the defection. So summa, whatever there is of being and action in a bad action is reduced to God as the cause, whereas whatever defect is in it is not caused by God, but by the deficient secondary cause. So this means, whatever is real and functioning in a bad action comes from God. So whatever is broken, messed up, or missing in that action comes from the creature. So like, let's go back to the leg. So the leg's power to move comes from God. However, the defect does not. So God's role over safety equals his role in evil. Meaning, since God is the cause and the protector of the world's safety, he's like the overseer, it seems he must also be the cause of the world's dangers and evils. And Aquinas answers this with an analogy. So the sinking of a ship is attributed to the sailor as the cause, from the fact that he does not fulfill what safety of the ships requires. But God does not fail in doing what is necessary for the safety of all. Hence, there is no parity. So, meaning God never neglects his role of being like the overseer of safety. So he cannot be blamed for evil the way a negligent sailor can be blamed for shipwreck, because God is all-knowing and all-powerful. He doesn't actually just like let you be unsafe, right? Or that's a bad way of phrasing it, but evil in the world comes from creatures failing, not from God failing. That's a simple way of putting it. Now this is really where we're going to have to be very, very specific. Is there a supreme evil? The short answer is no, at least not entirely as you would initially think. So the objection to this would be, there is a supreme good, and because everything has a contrary cause, there must be a supreme evil. Aquinas states in the Summa, but nothing can be essentially bad, for it was shown above that every being as such is good, and that evil can exist only in good as in its subject. So evil is a thing, it's a lackey of thing, as stated before. So he states again, there cannot be a supreme evil because, as was shown above, although evil always lessens good, yet never wholly consumes it. So there is not anything, quote, which is evil, in itself, because then it would be lacking of being. So evil must come from a natural good, and if there's no natural good to destroy or come from a defect, there therefore cannot be an evil, because it's a lacking of things. So there can't be a lacking of nothing, because that's just nothing. So Aquinas states again, every evil is caused by good, as was shown above, and because evil can only be the accidental cause, and thus it cannot be the first cause, for the accidental cause is subsequent to the direct cause. Now, he's using a lot of, that's a little bit confusing. So once again, I'll explain. So this is just a restatement of earlier claims in different words. So because every evil comes directly and only from good, there cannot be a direct cause of evil, which is evil in itself, because, as I stated before, that would just be nothing, because it's a lacking of good. So a lot of people, I'm sure, when I said, no, there isn't a supreme evil, would whisper to themselves, well, what about Satan, right? The answer to this is Satan is not 100% evil in the way of the natural. So because he's created by God, he's a fallen angel. So he's created by God. He has a natural good. However, he is totally depraved of supernatural or moral good. However, Satan is not the antithesis of God in the way that He's not like a supreme evil, as in God is the supreme good. So that would imply he had the same power of God, just in the negative of the evil. So a more accurate like interpretation of his antithesis would be Saint Michael the Archangel, though Saint Michael mocks him. So that's kind of still not even a good example. So he cannot be the supreme evil, because then God wouldn't be God, because then there's two people that are of the same power in the universe, and then God is not all powerful. So what? So there have been and or will be times in all of our lives which we say the words, "Why God?" I stated this in the beginning. So whether that is a sense of why would you do this, or why would you let this happen, you now know from before that God does not cause moral evil. However, he may allow for certain evils to pass. Still, in this instance comes the same question. If you were so loving, why did you let this happen to me? The best place to find answer quote for this is the book of Job. Now, you'll understand why I put answer in quotations in one moment. So, the book of Job. So Job was an extremely faithful man who had many riches and was blessed by God in so many different ways. He has many children and a plentiful amount of sheep and oxen, camels, donkeys, had many servants, and was, quote, the greatest man among all the people in the East, not only in wealth, but in spirit, right? He was very faithful, making regular sacrifices on behalf of his children's sins. So, meanwhile, Satan visits God and his angels and requests to test Job, which God allows, but initially commands Satan does no harm to Job himself, then telling him to only spare his life later. Over the course of some time, Job loses his wealth, his servants, and his children, followed by his health. Quote, painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. I mean, he's not in good shape. So following this, his wife tells him to curse God and just accept death, which he rejects. And his friends tell him it must be a punishment from God for an unknown sin, which he obviously denies both of these repeatedly. So God's answer of why would you do this to me, God? Right. So there are many, very long. The majority, I'd say, of this book is his friends telling him, why would God do this thing unless it's, not sin, or you must have done something wrong. This is God's answer. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. He said, where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me, if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? This is continued by 2 more chapters of God essentially saying the same thing over and over again, in which has the meaning of, you're not me. You're not God. You're not omnipotent. You're not omniscient. You're not all powerful or all knowing. So who are you to tell me what is right and wrong? Right? To put this more simply, we as finite creatures cannot grasp God's infinite knowledge and essence. Therefore, we cannot in ourselves say what is good and bad based on our own judgment, based on our own, timeline and sight. We cannot see the big picture as God can see. He can see the entirety of the picture. We can see like a big picture from our perspective. We think like this is only bad and only bad in itself, but God has the entirety of the picture. So what do we do? So an easy answer, which I'll hear a lot, is it's people say like it's God's plan. However, it's I feel like we should refrain from this statement, not because it's necessarily bad, but because of the implications. So saying it's God's plan is true, but only under a certain specific lens of interpretation. That's why it's so dangerous. So it's easy for someone in peril to view this as, God authored this pain into his plan for me. But as you should know, this is just simply not true. God did not like give you this misfortune, this uncertainty. God's plan is in itself perfect, right? It has no flaw. God's sole plan. So where does evil come from? Well, it's human free will. Human free will and agency introduced evil and destruction into the world. Evil is a corruption of how things are supposed to be, not a foundational building block of the universe introduced by God. So the answer is simple, perhaps overused, but correct. Trust in God. Trust in God. That's literally all you have to do. God indeed has a perfect plan for you. You need to refrain and repent from your sin, and you will find yourself on his path. The more and more we stray from God's path, the more trouble we're going to find ourselves in, which brings ourselves to the final part. So I'm going to tell you two short stories which should kind of tie this all together. The first, a man walks into a barber shop, and he's getting his haircut, and the barber, they're talking about God, and the guy goes, you actually believe in that stuff? I mean, come on, look around you. I mean, there are people dying all over the place. I mean, there's people in peril. You know, there's evil all over the world. How can you believe in an all good and all loving God? And the barber responds and says, well, look outside. Look at that homeless man walking by. Like, look at that guy's hair. I mean, there's no way barbers are real. The guy goes, what? What are you talking about? He goes, well, I mean, look at his hair. It's so long. There's no way barbers are real. I mean, barbers are there to cut hair, right? I mean, if barbers were real, that guy's hair would be down to he'd have like a nice haircut. He's like, well, he probably just doesn't go. And he goes, exactly. The reason there is so much evil in the sense of at least free will is because not everyone is going to go to God. So because of that fact, because we're not going to be infinitely connected to God in the way that he is infinitely loving to us, it's outside of our nature. There's going to be sin. It's simply a truth. There is going to be sin in the world because not everyone is going to be in right relationship with God. That is just a fact. We see it many times during the Olivet discourses in which Jesus says the path is narrow, few will enter. Right, where it's frankly, and I actually met the guy, but the point is, as I repeated multiple times already, but I'll read it once more. Not everyone's going to go to God, and that's as much as a misfortune and an unfortunate truth that is. It's the truth, and therefore there's going to be evil in this world caused by the disconnect from God, caused by our the unfortunate side of free will. And the fact is, God can't take away that free will because then we lack the nature of love. We cannot choose Him with the same level of love, right? As we would without free will, right? We wouldn't be able to love one another, and therefore love God. We wouldn't be able to freely choose God, and therefore our choice to follow God, quote, choice, would mean nothing because it wouldn't be a choice. We would just be mindless robots walking the earth. My second story is more personal. So in November, I went on a retreat called Kairos with my high school. On this retreat, you get separated into small groups. Each have a student leader and a head leader, which is usually a teacher or someone from staff. And you'll go into these small groups and you'll talk about like a variety of different things, mostly tying back to somewhat of the spiritual. And not obviously, but I cannot talk about what specifically we're talking about, but I can say this: but the conversation eventually arrived at death, and my teacher, Mr. Cross, he stated this. He quoted an interview with Stephen Colbert, and in which he said this is following his father's death, and the interview essentially asked like, well, how are you dealing with this? Like how are you not like absolutely distraught? And Stephen Colbert quotes again. This is like a quote inception. It's a quote within a quote, but I regress. Stephen Colbert quotes J.R.R. Tolkien, and he states, "What punishments of God are not gifts?" What punishments of God are not gifts? Now, this quote is not to be taken as literally as you may seem. That God doesn't punish the just. He'll make you, we're going to suffer in his following, but that's besides the point. The point is, when we have something that, we hold so dear to our hearts, and we love it so much, whether that's a person, a relationship, mom or dad, or just like a thing. Maybe you're like a fantastic baseball player, but then one day, you step onto the field and you're pitching, and all of a sudden you hyperextend your shoulder. Or maybe you're a football player and you get absolutely rocked. You get absolutely rocked, and you have like terrible injury plus CTE. You can never play baseball. You can never play football ever again. Why did this happen? Well, the fact is, we already covered why this would happen. But the fact is, we would not be able to mourn a thing, a person, a relationship so much if they meant nothing to us. The fact is, we wouldn't be able to miss them so much if they didn't mean so much to us. That it would be nothing. We would just move on with our lives. The fact is, we had so much, right? We had something to lose, and that in itself is something to be grateful for. The common quote I like is, don't be sad it's gone, be happy it happened, right? Don't be sad it's gone, be joyful, and absolutely jumping for joy that this wonderful thing, person, place came into your life. You were able to experience it, though might be for a short time or an even longer time. The fact is, you were able to experience it. You were able to share memories with that person. And though they may be gone now, the fact is, you had something at one point that meant so much to you that now you are able to mourn that thing. And the fact is, because we had that person so important, we can look to the future and say, if this happened to me once, if I had this fantastic thing once, then there's absolutely 100% a chance that it could happen again, that I could find another person. And in that, a better person, a way better person, right? A way better person will come into my life. This will clear the way for, what St. Augustine calls the greater good. And, Mr. Cross, unfortunately, God bless his soul, died of cancer growing in his mouth. And I was like this guy, I spent a whole week with him in prayer. And I actually cried in this guy's arms before. I was so stressed. And I mean, I'd spent so much, given so much to this guy. And all of a sudden he's gone. And in that moment, I looked back and I said, what punishment of God are not gifts? We were able to once have something. Once again, I'll state, we had something that we held so close to ourselves that its absence leaves a pit so deep and so vast and so wide that nothing seems to be able to fill it. So we feel absolutely distraught. But the fact is, there is someone that can fill it. And that, my friends, is God. And he has an overflowing and infinite love for you. So when these things happen, we must, we cannot allow ourselves to turn to the world or fleshly desires. We must ask ourselves, we must tell ourselves, trust in God, turn to God, ask him, what do you have in store for me? Guide me to your path. Because God has something in store for you, I promise you. And just allow yourself to submit to his will, and I promise you, you will not regret it. This got a little bit deeper than my past videos, but I think it's a very important lesson that that we all have these questions of why does this happen, God? What are you doing? and I think it's important to talk about. But at the end of the day, Jesus loves you. God bless. Christ is Lord.